Have you ever found yourself doing the same thing over and over when creating new projects? Maybe you have to put in the same folder structure for a class library, or maybe you need to configure dependency injection in a certain way. Project templates allow us to create that custom layout once and then start from there the next time. In this video, we're going to build out a start of a project and then save it as a project template to be used again next time. In this specific example, we'll be building out a Caliburn Micro starter template with dependency injection and a sample of how to set up your shell view and your child view. While a demo will focus on this one project type, that won't be the main focus of the video. The focus will be on how you can take this technique and use it in any project type you want. If you've watched my video on item templates, this video will take things to the next level. Now, if this is your first video you've watched of mine, my name is Tim Corey, and it's my goal to make learning C# easier. One of the ways I do that is by teaching context. There are a lot of tutorials out there that teach you what to do. I go a few steps beyond that to show you when to do it, why you should or should not do it, what pitfalls to avoid, and what the best practices are. Basically, I get you ready for the real world. If that's the type of training you're interested in, subscribe to this channel and hit the little bell icon to be notified when I release new videos, about every Monday and Thursday. Finally, in the description, there are links to get the source code for this video, to sign up for my mailing list, to join Patreon, and to get access to my courses, as well as all the links mentioned in today's video. If you're looking to make a career out of C# or you're any better in your C# career, my content can launch you forward faster. Check out all I have to offer at iamtimcorey.com or sign up for my mailing list to hear from me directly. Okay, let's go to Visual Studio, and we're going to create a brand new project. Now, right now I have no filters in place. I could just do a quick search for WPF. Whoops, I hit enter too quickly. And once you find WPF, I'm going to choose a WPF app, a .NET Core version. Again, the focus of this video is not to say, oh, this is a desktop video. This is about creating project templates. So if you want to do web projects, the same techniques will work. So just note that what we're doing here will work in web, it'll work in services, it'll work in console apps. Pretty much anything you want to do will work the same way. gRPC apps. All right, so let's hit next. And we don't need to worry too much about this project's name. So I'm going to call this WPF project template, and I call this the project template solution. Okay. Again, this name is just for when we save the actual raw template in our source control. It's not for what the template will use. We can get to choose what our template will use, and we'll see that in a little bit. So we hit create. And once this gets created, we will do some setup. Now, I'm not here to really teach you Caliburn Micro today. That's not my goal, nor WPF. I do have a whole playlist on WPF, and usually I think all but one or two of the videos use Caliburn Micro, so you'll probably be familiar with this if you have seen those videos, and if not, don't worry. You can go check those out if you really want to get more in depth. Okay, so I'm going to delete the main window. We don't need that. I'm going to add first I'm going to add a dependency. And I do have the include pre-release checked, and that's important. So I'm going to choose Caliburn Micro for my search. And notice there's a pre-release in NuGet itself. It used to be this is only on their private NuGet feed, but now on their main NuGet feed, there is the pre-release, which is 4.0.105-alpha. This is the one that works with .NET Core. And it works really well. So I'm going to choose this. Now, I have gotten questions before, should I use an alpha in my production application? No, probably not. However, if you are building an application that will go to production, probably by the time that you get the application to production, this will be on 4.1 or 4.2. So it's not something you have to worry too much about. This organization has been really great about putting out stable applications for a very long time. That being said, I don't I don't advise you put this into production right away, okay? Definitely give it some time. Give the team some time to work out the bugs because they will find some bugs. But I want to get started right away so you can see this and get a project template up for you. So let's hit install. And if there is a stable version out, use that stable version. Just know it may have some changes compared to the version that I'm installing. Okay, now that Caliburn Micro is installed, we can right-click on our project. We're going to add a new class, and we'll call this class Bootstrapper. All right, make it public. And we're going to say it inherits from Bootstrapper base. Control dot to add the using Caliburn Micro. And now we need a constructor and an initialize. That's pretty important. If you don't have this constructor with the initialize, nothing's going to happen, which I found out the hard way when I was debugging. I had accidentally not put that in there. So make sure that's there. Now we need a protected override for our configure method. All right. And in our configure method, we don't need the base.configure. We're going to create a configuration ourselves. We do need to have a private simple container equals new simple container we can use. And this is the dependency injection part of Caliburn Micro. The simple container is kind of what it's used to using, and so I'm going to use that for our dependency injection. But you could definitely bring in a different dependency injection and get it set up. This is one of those things that's great to configure once and then put in your template, because usually I get something wrong the first time when I do it, or I have to think through, how do I do this again? I don't do it that often. And so by putting it in a template, now I not only have it working right out of the gate, but I also have an example of how to set it up. So singleton window manager. And this is for if you want to have multiple windows or multiple views open at the same time. And then singleton event aggregator. Event aggregator. This is for if you want to send events between the systems, between the forms. So if you've watched my Timco Retail Manager course, I use the event aggregator to send a message when I log in to the shell view saying, hey, that person just logged in. Therefore, you can start doing some actions like closing out the login page and opening up I believe the shopping carts we open up. So those kind of things, okay? So those are a couple of the built-in Caliburn Micro things you probably will need. And then we're going to register all of our views and our view models. I'm sorry, not views, just view models. So what we're going to do is we're going to look through our entire solution for anything that ends with a view model, and we'll register that with its own type, meaning there's not an interface. It's just a view model itself. So get type, so it's using reflection, assembly, get types. Now, some people wonder about reflection. They say, well, isn't that an expensive operation? And yes, it is. And by expensive, I don't mean minutes. I mean, it could be a second or two. But if you're doing that in a loop, that's a bad thing. If you're doing it a lot, that can be a bad thing. In our case, we're doing it once at the very start of our project, which means our application might load up a second slower. But by doing so, what will happen is now we have access to register all these things ourselves and pick them up automatically instead of manually adding a registration for every view, view model. So where we need to have the link for this. Type is type.class, or is class, where type.name.ends with view model. So this is going to use our naming convention and say, find the classes that end with view model, output into a list, and then for each, view model type. This just makes reading it a little easier. We could call this X. But view model type container.register per request. Okay, and let's do this on a new line. View model type dot to string. That gives the string name of it, and then view model type. Okay, so that's what we need for registration of each view model in our system. So go find any class that ends with view model and register that as a class inside of our container. And now, whenever we request a class, we can request it from the dependency injection, and it will handle all of the dependencies of that view model. Okay, so now we need to do a couple more overrides. Let's kind of scroll this up here. Protected override, and we're going to override the on startup. And I'm not going to do the base. We're going to do display root view for shell view model, which we don't have yet, but we'll get there. Okay, and we need to do a control dot here to add a using statement for system.windows. And then we need a protected override, and we need the get instance. And in here, what we need to do is we need to return container.getInstance for service and key. Okay, so whenever you ask for an instance, we're going to pull it from our container. So the reason we're overriding this is because we want to pull from our container, not use the built-in container system from Caliburn Micro, not the one that they're going to do internally we don't have access to. Okay, so that's the get instance. We also need to override, so protected override, and this is going to be the get all instances. And here we're going to return container get all instances of service. Okay, so if you ask for one thing, we're going to get all the instances of that if you ask for all instances. And finally, we're going to do a protected override on build up. And what this does is it says container.buildup_instance. And this gets things kicked off. Okay, so there's our bootstrapper. We still have this shell view model problem. So let's right click on our project and say add new folder, view model, view models. And we need one for views. And we need one more. So this one's going to be for models. Now, a couple of questions I may get at this point. One is going to be, Tim, this is an awful lot of setup for a video that's about something else. Yeah, it is, but I didn't want to skip over it and then have you go, well, how did you get all this stuff? I really don't like the magic or the, hey, code appears automatically. So if you really want to skip ahead, that's fine, but I wanted to show you so there is no magic. Second of all, I often get questions on, well, aren't these the three different layers of your application? The view is the UI, the view model is your logic, and the model is your data access. And the answer is no. These three combined are your user interface. Okay, so all three combined are your user interface layer. They're not separate layers. All right, so let's create a quick window. We're going to call this our shell. Oops, not a window, a class. I'm in the view models. Almost messed that up. So class, this is the shell view model, singular. And we'll make it public. And we're going to inherit from conductor, control.use Caliburn Micro. And we'll say object. So that's the shell view model. Inside here, we'll have a constructor that we'll use in just a minute. But that's all we really need for our shell view model. Now let's add our shell view, which is a window. And we can leave this pretty much alone. We'll eventually, you know what, let's go ahead and do it now. We're going to put in the active item. So content control, the name is going to be active item. And that's it. So the active item is going to take whatever child view you have active and say, okay, that's the active item, and display that in this spot, which happens to be the entire shell view. So we just put it right in the grid. So it's row 0, column 0. It's going to take the entire space, and that's just going to be the child view. In some cases, you may want to have more in your shell view, like a menu option and those sort of things. And you can kind of arrange this how you want. But for us, we're just going to try and keep this as demo friendly and as simple as possible, because that way more projects can use it. I would rather add things to my demo or to my project template than have to remove them and forget about some. So that's kind of where I lean, but I do try and put some stuff in there that I might need if I can easily pull it out. I'm going to do some easily pulled out stuff in just a minute. So that's going to be all I need here. So now at my bootstrapper, I can do a control dot here and add a using statement for the shell view model. Now my bootstrapper is set up. Now we go to app.xaml right here, and we need to make some changes. First of all, remove the startup URI, not the end bit, not the close bracket. Okay, so now inside of our application.resources, we add a resource dictionary. Inside there, we add a resource dictionary dot merge dictionaries. And then inside there, we add our resource dictionary. Is this verbose? Yes, but the reason why is because I'm trying to say, hey, we can merge more than one in here if you wanted to merge multiple dictionaries. It's kind of setup stuff that there's not really a payoff in this small project template, but there may be in your larger project. Okay, so inside the resource dictionary, we're just going to say local : bootstrapper x key is going to be bootstrapper. Make sure you get the spelling right and the casing right and all the rest, because otherwise you'll have a problem trying to find that. Now, it's yelling at me. Don't worry. When we compile, it should go away. We should find it. So I'm going to close out of these, and I am going to create another view. So let's do that now. So we're going to create a view model first. Let's create a class, and we'll call this demo view model is fine. This is our demonstration, and we'll inherit from screen. This is something that the user is going to want to get rid of. Okay, oops, capital S. Control dot, not the using system.windows.forms. That'll be incorrect, and it will not allow your system to work correctly. Using Caliburn Micro. Okay, that's all we have to do for demo view model. And for view, it's even easier. We're going to do a user control. So all of our child views will be user controls. Our main view is a window. So this will be our demo view. And in here, the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the background. That we have some kind of color here. I kind of like the Dodger blue. It's kind of pretty. So we're going to use Dodger blue. And that way we can see that the child view is actually going to open up. All right. This is the last bit of configuration. So we go to shell view model, and in the constructor, we're going to say activate item async. IOC.get. This gets from our dependency injection system. I want the demo view model. And we're going to pass in a new cancellation token, which by default, what it does is it gives me my system.threading.cancellation token. I'm going to take that part off and then do control dot with my using statement for using system.threading. So now I have this shell view model. When it loads, the first thing it's going to do is activate an item. Remember that the shell view has the active item content control. So what it's going to do is it's going to put the active item on this view. Let's just run this real quick so we have it running, and then it'll be ready to start creating our project template out of all this setup. Okay, there we go. So we have a really simple form, I guess you could say, a simple WPF application, but there's a lot of setup stuff because we have the bootstrapper and all this stuff. It's pretty standard. Okay, the only thing that might change is what you register in your configure, and maybe if you change which window you start from, but usually you keep that the same as convention. App.xaml, this stuff is stuff that I don't remember. I have to go to a previous project and type it out from the previous project just so I have it, kind of in my mind and I don't mix up something here. So a lot of this stuff is just basic setup stuff that I have in every WPF application that I use Caliburn Micro with, which is pretty much all of them. But it's not stuff that really changes from project to project. I may add to it, I may modify it after the fact, but the starter is kind of the same. And so now I have a great starting point for my project template. All right, so with all this stuff, let's go ahead and say project, and we're going to export template, project template. And this has been something that's been changed recently to be to work better than it used to. So if you're using an older version of VS 2019 or even Visual Studio 2017, you might have a couple of issues with this, but it has gotten a lot better in 2019. And they've made we actually submitted a bug report at one point for some of the stuff that's happening, and they were able to fix it. So kudos to the team for really working hard on that and getting this to work even better. So project template, I'm going to choose my WPF project template. Now, there's only one project here, but just note that if there are multiple, you have to choose the one you want. This does raise a point that some people have asked about, and that is, what if I want to have my class library as well? Well, that's a multi-project template, and that's a whole different animal. Essentially, what you do is you export each project individually, and then you create a master template file that brings in multiple templates. But then there's some other naming things you have to do because you can't just have that easy name dialog where it says, what's your project name? Because you have two projects. So that can cause some issues there. So we're not going to go over in this video. It's kind of out of scope for the traditional project template, but just know that it is possible. It's called a multi-project template. And I may cover it at some point if you really want me to. So with everything else, I rely on your feedback. So if you really want to see a multi-project template, if that's something that really interests you, leave a comment down below. Let me know. What I do is I have a suggestion list, and I increase the value or the ranking of a suggestion based upon how many times I have people ask for it. Now, that does not mean that I always do what is suggested, because sometimes it's just out of the scope. I have had a lot of people that have asked me to do videos on React or on Vue or on JavaScript in general, and we're just not there yet. There's an awful lot of C# to go, and I really encourage people, don't try to learn two different languages at once. If you're just starting learning C#, or if you don't feel like you're really an expert in C#, I don't encourage you to jump ship and start going with JavaScript, because what will happen is you will have a little bit of knowledge in multiple places and no real deep knowledge anywhere, and that's not very marketable if you're looking for a job. And it's also not very helpful when you're trying to build projects. It can actually be more discouraging to do that. So all that to say that if you want to have that, leave a comment down below and we'll talk about it. Okay? So let's hit next. So for template name, remember I said that our project name wasn't terribly important? Well, by default, it uses the project name, but I can choose something else. So Caliburn Micro Starter. the description, a starter project for Caliburn, Caliburn.micro. Let's be official here. That includes dependency injection and a sample for how to create the shell view. Wow, if I can spell here. Shell view and a child view. Okay, simple enough. I'm not going to do an icon or preview image. I would encourage you, if you're going to do it for anything besides yourself, create an icon and a preview image, but I'm not going to for this. Okay, now just so you know, I am going to, there's a link in the description to get this source code, including just getting this project template itself as a zip file. So you can just take the zip file from the project template and put it right into your Visual Studio, and I'll show you where to put that, and then you can just use it without even having to open up the source code or mess with it. Now, I'll also include the source code so you can play around with it and try it out, but that might be something that interests you. So that link is in the description. All right, so we're going to hit finish here. Now, both boxes are checked, so automatically import the template into Visual Studio and display an Explorer window on the Output Files folder. We'll hit finish, and that window comes up, and I'll show you. There's where it is. It says it's in the exported templates, and it's Caliburn Micro Starter. And if we notice here, we also have templates, and under Project Templates, we have our Caliburn Micro Starter. This location, the templates/project templates, is where Visual Studio will pick it up. Now, if we go to File, and we say Add New Project. Now, in my preview version of Visual Studio, it shows up with a new tag right at the top. This is the release version of Visual Studio, which of course is behind the preview version. It doesn't yet have that new tag to show up. It is in the list, but if you scroll all the way down, and you have no filters on, and scroll up a little bit, there it is. So Caliburn Micro Starter. Why it's not at the very bottom, I don't know, but I have a few things below it. So Caliburn Micro Starter, a starter project for Caliburn.micro that includes dependency injection and a sample for how to create the shell view and child view. Okay, cool. Or you can do a search for it. Caliburn, and wait for it to search through, and there we go. It's found it. That is something else that has been improved recently. It used to be that it wouldn't find it in a search because the cache for the search hadn't been updated yet. So that is a benefit. Notice I haven't restarted Visual Studio. There was no camera tricks there or anything like that. This was I showed you straight from creating the template to adding it. So that's another big improvement, is it shows up right away. So it's not great in the fact there's no tags to it. And there isn't a way right now in the wizard to add tags. I believe that's at least my suggestion for what should be coming. I'm not sure where it is in the priority list, but that's what I've been pushing for is, hey, let's put tags in there. But for now, there is no way to do it in that wizard. But I will show you how to add those, because otherwise, if you have a filter here for C#, it won't find this, even though it's a C# project. So just note that. Now we're going to select it. We're going to hit next. Notice it said the project name is Caliburn Micro Starter 1. Let's call this our output, our created project. Something like that, whatever. We hit create. And now let's set that as the startup project. Notice in here we have Bootstrapper. And notice the namespace is created project, not WPF project template. And our views and our view models, even our empty models folder is all here. Our app.xaml is set up properly with Bootstrapper. And if we run this, notice we're running the created project, the new one. If we run this, it's going to run just like the other one ran. So right out of the gate, in about 5 seconds, I created from my product template a template that had all of Caliburn Micro installed. it had it configured, it had a shell view, it had a child view, it had dependency injection, everything is set up for me. So I just saved all that work, and now I can start from here. That's the real power of a project template. Now, let's make it better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my project templates. I'm going to delete this. Okay, that project template's no longer there. Now, it does not affect the projects that were created with that template. It just means that any new project can't use it. Let's go back to my exported template. What I'm going to do is I'm going to extract everything. So let's just grab this stuff right here. And I'm going to extract it right into my exported templates. That's fine. So now there's all my files. I'm going to delete Caliburn Micro Starter. Okay, so now this is what was in the template. Let's right-click on my template.vs template, and we're going to open it in Notepad++. Now, this is the setup for our project template. The important part really for us is this template data at the very top. The template content, this is where it lays out, here's all the stuff to put in there. So we're going to put in the demo view and the shell view and bootstrapper and all the rest. But up here is where we configure how the template displays. So there's the name of the template, there's the description of a template, and the project type and the subtype and the order. Which you may say, well, project type C#, why won't it show up in the C# only list? Well, because that's not a tag. So this is for actually the Visual Studio project. So when you create a project, it's going to say, is it a VB.NET or is it an F#? No, it's C#. But we want tags here. So under project subtypes, a good place to put it, I'm going to create 3 different types of tags. First of all is the language tag. Okay? And you want to close this out with a /language tag and make sure it's spelled correctly. Inside the language tag, I'm going to choose C#. Actually, the letters C and the £, not the spelled out C# version. These tags match what's in Visual Studio. So let's go here. If we were to say solution, add new project, notice the tags down here, C#, Linux, Mac, Windows, console. That corresponds to the languages. Notice the language is C#, not CSHARP. The platforms, which we'll do in a minute, we're going to have all different platforms, but we're going to use Windows. And the project type, desktop. Now notice there is no WPF down here. There's web, but nothing below that. There's no WPF, which they have desktop, and that's what they classify WPF and WinForms. But we're going to actually add a new tag here for project types. So we'll see that in just a minute. So first, the language type is C#. And then we're going to add the platform type. So the platform tag, not platform tag. There we go. These are all tags. So if you have anything else besides tag, that won't work. We're going to say Windows. Now, just so you know, we are using .NET Core 3.1 for our WPF project. However, that does not mean it will run on Mac or Linux. So don't choose those or don't add those. Just because .NET Core powers WPF does not mean that WPF is cross-platform, because .NET Core is cross-platform. WPF stands for Windows Presentation Foundation. The W, the Windows, is kind of indicative of how tightly it's tied to Microsoft Windows, not just a generic window. So there is not, at this point, a talk of porting WPF to other platforms. Now, there are third-party toolings like Avalonia and Project Uno that will take your WPF or that style application with XAML and port it to Mac and to Linux. So I will be doing videos on those in the near future, but just note those are possibilities. All that to say, your platform tag should only say Windows if you have a WPF project type. Okay, so my project type tag. So this is the project type. There we go. Always close out your tag before you do anything else with it. So the project type, what we're going to say is, first of all, desktop. But then we're also going to create another tag for WPF. And I want to do this for a couple of reasons. First of all, I like the idea of having just a WPF project type. Now just note that the built-in projects will not show up there. So if you have a WPF project and you want to create one, and you want to use the base WPF .NET Core project type that Microsoft provides, it won't show up under the project type of WPF. That might be a little confusing. I could change this. In fact, you know what? Let's change it. Timco. So these are my project types. So just to kind of keep it clear that this is totally separate, this is not Microsoft supplied, this is from me. But I also want to show you, how do you add multiple tags? So if you want more than one of the same type of tag, it's not a comma separated list or anything like that, you just add a new XML entry for that type and the new tag. So I have duplicated now project type tag twice. One's for desktop, one's for Timco. That's all there is. We save it, we close it, we'll come back here, and what we're going to do is we're going to zip all this back up. So we'll send to a zip file. We're going to call this Caliburn Micro Starter. And then we can actually copy this into our project templates. I put it right into C# because that's the type it is. You don't have to, and really it doesn't really change the hierarchy here, but that way it's kind of separated out. By default, it just puts it right in the root here. Not a big fan of that. So now I can delete everything in here, except I'm not going to delete the template, just so I have a copy of it so I can give it to you. But with that, now we can close this out. We can go File, Add New Project, and we can start doing our filters. For example, in this list is now Timco. And there's the Caliburn Micro Starter. Notice C#, Windows, Desktop, and Timco are the tags. Now, I can clear that out, and I can say, give me all the C# Windows, and that's still a lot. But if you scroll down here near the bottom, it's going to be Caliburn Micro Starter with C#, Windows, Desktop, Timco. I could even do my desktop filter, and there's less of them, and still at the bottom is Caliburn Micro Starter. So doing this allows me to have just one, which is kind of awesome. Oops, not UWP. I want Timco. I use the scroll button. So that shows me exactly what I want, or you can do a search. And search allows you to find what you're looking for very easily. So if I want Caliburn Micro, I just type Caliburn Micro, and there I go, I can get started. So that's how you add those tags, which are really helpful in finding what you want. So with that, you can get started with project templates of your own. So if you want to start, so let's start with going with C#, and let's just choose Windows console app.NET Core. You can create your own console app, make some modifications, and then do the exact same thing. Go to project export template, and choose the project template of that specific console app, and now create a project template of your own for that. And then just modify that, that file to include the tags that you want to make it easier to find. Okay, to put these templates into place or into use, if you want to do it manually, you find where Visual Studio has the settings file. So typically, one way of finding this easily is to find your, like in my case, it's in my documents, Visual Studio 2019. And then inside there, we have the templates folder inside there, project templates. And I usually put it inside of Visual C#. So that's where you'd put the zip file of your project template. Just make sure that when you open it up, that it actually has that mytemplate.vs template file. Otherwise, it's not really a project template. Okay, that's what really makes it a project template. Notice everything else is pretty close to the same stuff. The CS proj file, CS files, and all the rest. So it's that VS template file that makes it a template. And you don't unzip this. You leave it zipped up. But that will keep everything together, and it will allow you to move it around quite easily. So, like I said, in the description, there's a link to get the source code from this video, including a copy of this zip file, which you can then just directly put into your Visual Studio if you want to work with Caliburn Micro and want to make it a little easier to do so. In a future video, I'll be turning this into a V6 project, which will allow us to create this as an extension that you can then just download from the Visual Studio store, the marketplace, so that you can install it right into Visual Studio without having to do anything manual, which also allows me to then make updates to it so that when that stable version of Caliburn Micro 4.0 comes out, I can update that NuGet package reference, make sure the template still works, and then update your client. But for now, this will work just fine, and you can use it if you want, or you can at least use examples that I showed you to build your own template and get started. Okay? Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I'd appreciate a thumbs up as well if you enjoyed this video, if you want more videos like it. Also, let me know if you have other suggestions. So if you want something else or something different, or just want more of the same, let me know. Okay? Thanks for watching, and as always, I am Tim Corey.